I meant to tell you a little bit about the last of the flatworms, the last of the platyhelminthes you need to know, Paragonimus. And Paragonimus is the lung fluke, and people get it. And then the fluke, this flatworm, it lives in your lungs. It makes you cough. And when you cough, you actually cough up these eggs that are fertilized and ready to go. And again, it'll be a snail that is one of the intermediate hosts. And the second intermediate host is some kind of a crustacean, like a crab or shrimp kind of thing. And people generally get it from eating uncooked shrimp or crabs, right? Paragonimus, when you look at it through the microscope, it's also a hermaphrodite. You got a whole bunch of stuff making eggs, a whole bunch of stuff making sperm. It's not sleek because it lives in the lungs instead of in the bile ducts, but otherwise, kind of looks the same. Now, we're going to talk about the last category of animals that we need to discuss, which are the roundworms. And flatworms, roundworms. The roundworms also have got a specific name. Do you remember what the flatworms are called? Flat like a plate, right? So the flatworms are platyhelminthes. The roundworms are known as nematodes, and the phylum is Nematoda. Nematoda. Those are the roundworms. Now, the roundworms are exciting because they have invented the pseudocoelom. Have we gotten to a true body cavity yet? Not yet. Okay, we're just at the point of having a false body cavity or pseudocoelom. Hey, what's good for you guys is that if I ask you, name a phylum with a pseudocoelom, there's only one, and it's the nematode. Okay, the roundworms. Now, roundworms were a big invention, not just because of the pseudocoelom, which from our perspective here in 120, difficult to appreciate. But their big excitement is they have got a complete digestive tract, a complete one, right? That means they have got a mouth and it goes into a stomach and down the intestinal tract, and they have got an anus, mouth and anus. Terrific invention. It means that you don't have to wait for your food to get digested before you take in more food, right? So that's pretty good. Now, nematodes are found everywhere. At the very introductory video, I told you that nematodes, there are like 59 billion for every human on planet Earth, and they're pretty much everywhere. When we are able to meet in real life, the nematodes are something that we usually see living in moss. One of the places nematodes love to live are in the bryophytes, in the mossy environments. But they live kind of like almost everywhere on land. Now, how are roundworms different from flatworms? I already told you. The roundworms have got a pseudocoelom. The flatworms, no coelom at all, right? So technically, if I did surgery on a roundworm, I would be able to open it up and there would be a space in there. It's not quite a coelom yet for reasons that you don't need to know. It has got a tough covering, which allows them to live out of water, and flatworms cannot live out of water. I know even inside of us, when they're inside of our intestinal tract, they're living in a water environment. But the nematodes, they can live out of water. They still don't have a vascular system. They're not big enough yet, but they've got a complete digestive tract, mouth and anus. Those are the big reasons they're different. There are very many parasitic roundworms, but most of the nematodes are just free living, and they're busy eating the bacteria that are in the soil. So most of them are not parasitic. It feels like the flatworms really like to be parasites, but the nematodes, there are a lot of them that are not parasitic. By the way, there is a very popular research nematode called C. elegans. And don't ask me to spell the first word. It's like canorhabditis, or it's a long word. C. elegans lots and lots of biology research gets done on nematodes. So the ones that you need to know, though, are these three that are parasites. The first one, Trichinella, you get from eating infected meat. Trichinella used to be very common in both Europe and the United States, and it was found in pigs. So that's how you get Trichinella. Ascaris. Ascaris, whenever a veterinarian says your dog or your cat has roundworms, or whenever the pediatrician says your kid has roundworms, they have got ascaris. It is a type of roundworm. It's a nematode. And you get that from eating feces that have got the eggs in it. Of course, we understand cats, they groom themselves. So if they get any feces on themselves, they will lick it off. That's how they will get it. Dogs don't care what they eat. So, they can get roundworms from eating feces or chewing on grass that had feces on it. And little kids are just not particularly careful about their hygiene. So if they're playing with a dog or a cat, or if they're playing in the backyard where, 6 months ago a cat pooped, then they can get roundworms. So one important thing is if you don't want your kids to get roundworms, make sure you keep your pets on a good roundworm preventative. And then there are these guys, the hookworms, and the hookworms are devious. They get right up through your feet. If you're running around barefoot in an area that is contaminated by this particular nematode, it'll go right up through your feet and you won't even know it. Crazy, right? Let's talk about them individually. First of all, Trichinella, I'm going to ask you to identify this at some point from looking at it on the screen. So make sure you Google lots of images so you can identify Trichinella. Trichinella, particularly Trichinella when it's inside of some muscle. So the Trichinella is going to develop inside of the intestinal tract of the animal, and then it will go into the animal's muscles. When it goes into the animal's muscles, whether it's a pig, which is one of its normal hosts, or a person, it will often cause muscle pain. And then it'll just hang out there until something eats that muscle. So if you are a pig that has it and a person eats you, then the person got it from eating your muscle. But if you're a person that has it, you've got these things in your muscles, and a lion eats you, well, the lion would get Trichinella from eating you. We've managed to eradicate it in the United States in all of our domestic pigs. So it used to be that you could eat a steak, medium rare or rare, but no one would ever have eaten any pork, medium rare or rare. And the reason was you had a risk of getting Trichinella. But as long as you're eating domestic stock, you're pretty safe in the United States or Europe. Right? So Trichinella, spiralis. Roundworms. I told you basically about roundworms. Whenever your vet says your dog has worms, it's very often going to be ascaris, which is a nematode. And that happens because you swallow some of the larva that is in this special package that just keeps it sort of in a state of suspended animation for a long, long time, just sitting there in some contaminated grass, right? And then if you swallow it, then they will come alive, they will reproduce. These guys are not hermaphrodites. There are male ascarids and female ascarids. And if they get lucky, then they will make fertilized eggs, and the fertilized eggs hang out here in the soil until someone else swallows it. So if you're out there picking up blades of grass and chewing on them, that might be a way that someone could get this particular nematode infection. And it's not uncommon in children. And then there are hookworms. Oh, hookworms are dastardly. First of all, The Trichinella, well, it's just not very common in the United States anymore. Roundworms, these guys, ascarids, they are very common in the United States in humans and in our pets, but they usually don't cause really severe symptoms, usually just like an upset stomach kind of situation, unless it's a really small puppy or kitten, in which case it can be fatal. But hookworms, they dig into the intestinal lining and they will cause significant blood loss. Now, not so significant that you will see yourself bleeding, but they take a lot of your blood. They're not content to just soak up nutrition from your digestive tract. They're feeding on your blood. And so they, particularly in little kids, will cause anemia. And as I said, they're only they there are hookworms that infect your dogs and hookworms that infect you. But generally, the ones that infect dogs, and the ones that infect you. They're species specific. So these are not worms that your kid could get from your dog. Still, keep taking care of your dog, right? Generally, the hookworms that people get, they get from other people that have hookworm. And we've pretty much eradicated it through most of the United States. It will go into your stomach and then it'll migrate through your tissues, which is weird, go into your lungs, cause you to cough, and then you will swallow what you coughed up, and then it will go out in your poop. And if the soil gets contaminated with human feces, then if you walk across that area barefoot, then you can get hookworm. So how did this used to happen? It's like, you're like, I'm not walking across poop. Why would anyone walk across poop? Well, it used to be that everywhere in the world that there were not sewer systems. There were either regions that we all agreed that we would put our poop, or we use things called outhouses. Outhouses have a little more privacy, but in their basic form, your outhouse is just this little building here. I am drawing a little building, and it was just a building over a hole in the ground. And when that hole in the ground got filled up to a certain point, then people would cover it over with dirt and then just move the outhouse to a different part of the property. So that meant that particularly in the southeastern United States, where it rains a lot and the soil is generally moist for a significant part of the year, then if you walked over to the outhouse barefoot, you were walking across ground that had these hookworm larvae in it, and they would just go right through your feet. You didn't even know it had happened, and then you would also have hookworms. So as recently as 1900, Arkansas had almost no sewer system, and there was a 20% infection rate. And when adults are infected, they handle it pretty well. When kids are infected, they will develop a severe anemia and cognitive impairment. And a severe anemia would make people want to eat weird things like chalk and dirt. So when we were eradicating malaria from the southeastern United States, another public health thing that we needed to handle was hookworm. And the way we did it was building sewer systems, but simultaneously we made it the law that children needed to wear shoes if they wanted to go to school. And that was really controversial. People were very angry about it because it's warm enough that kids didn't really need shoes, and shoes for kids are expensive. So it was seen as a penalty on the poor. But so was the anemia caused by hookworm a penalty for the poor. And that had a permanent decrease in how smart the kids could get because they grew up with anemia, and so we eradicated hookworms, and it was a public health benefit. So public health, a good thing. That's it. We'll have more animals that are recognizable as animals in our next lab. 2 more labs on animals to go.